New York Democrats took the polls to decide who will be the nominee in this year's midterm elections. Talking Point analyst Conor Wight is here to break down how many underdog candidates came out on top.
For about a year now, pundits and politicians alike have predicted a blue wave across the country in the upcoming midterm elections. Already, that prediction seems to have rung true in state Senate races across New York, including in the 53rd State Senate District, which includes parts of Syracuse. According to the New York State Board of Elections, progressive challenger Rachel May beat Dave Valesky with 50.5% of the vote. Valesky will fall to not only a first-time candidate, but to the first challenger for his seat in 14 years. Why? He's a former member of the now-defunct Independent Democratic Caucus, and he and other members of the IDC faced the retaliation of New York Democrats on primary day that felt cheated by the rogue group. Formed in 2011, 4 Democrats broke away from the Democratic Party to form the IDC and came in line with Republicans. Opponents accused the small group of senators of undermining the Democratic agenda, helping Republican senators to prevent progressive legislation in Albany. Members of the IDC apparently recognized the threat of progressive furor earlier in the year when Governor Andrew Cuomo and State Senator Jeffrey Klein announced the caucus would be dissolved in April, but to no avail. 6 of the 8 members of the IDC, including Valesky, fell to further left candidates. This was and will be the theme New York politics in the foreseeable future. Governor Cuomo defeated progressive challenger Cynthia Nixon in the gubernatorial primary, but not before moving left on his policies to appeal to this year's voters. Senator Klein spent over $2 million in his state Senate race, which was not only more than Nixon spent on her governorship campaign, but was not enough to defeat former Cuomo aide Alessandria Biaggi. Although progressives have largely won the battle, within their own party, the true contest comes in November when May and her fellow anti-IDC candidates face Republican opposition. So we saw that May lost, May wasn't accepted, and Valesky is not going to make it. So what's going on? Well, she is technically the unofficial winner, but we have about 1,500 absentee ballots that haven't yet been accounted for. For Valesky to actually overcome the deficit that he's at the moment, he's going to need about 607 of those votes, which is roughly about 83%. We won't know that until Thursday, which is how long voters have to send those in. But in all likelihood, he's not going to make up the deficit. I don't see him getting that many of the absentee votes. I think we can confidently say Rachel May is the winner.
And before we move on to the general election, these primaries were such a shakeup. How are the primaries alone going to impact Albany this upcoming year?
Well, I don't think the primaries on their own are going to have that much of a shakeup. At the end of the day, these are new candidates that won. They're progressive candidates, but it's still Democrats replacing Democrats. I don't think that this is going to have a huge shakeup on progressive or Democratic legislation come November, assuming they hold their seats. Now, that is a big assumption as Rachel May isn't confirmed yet. She does have to go up against Republican opposition. She's facing Janet Berman. This is the first time that a Republican has challenged for this seat since 2010, and it'll be interesting to see if Democratic voters that wanted Valesky will be able to form a base around May and make sure that she gets in.
So the next step here is Republican Senate seats, because the progressive have kind of taken the IDC's ground. So how much of those Republican Senate seats can they realistically take?
Well, that's the big thing, to see whether or not legislation really changes or if New York is going to be more progressive next year with this new state Senate. It's going to be Democrats flipping those Republican seats. They currently have 31 seats with one Democrat, defecting, essentially, acting as a Republican. So they only need a few to get the majority out of 63. Now, there's some interesting races to watch as 5 Republicans that have traditionally held their seats for quite a long time have announced that they're not going to run. Now, that includes John DeFrancisco of the 50th District, which also includes parts of Syracuse along with the 53rd. He's been in the Senate, rather, since 1992. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not voters want someone completely new and a Democrat, or if they're going to throw their weight behind newcomer Bob Antonacci, who is the Onondaga County Comptroller.
Definitely one to be looking out for.